What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with the stats, as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Call of Duty Vanguard's multiplayer. And now that the Warzone integration has happened, I just want to quickly clarify, this series is only for multiplayer. Some of these stats and some of these best class setups may transition well into Warzone, but not necessarily, so just keep that in mind. But diving right into the episode, let's start it off with our damage profile, which with the NZ-41, it's pretty interesting. It's going to be a 3 to 4 shot kill anywhere in the body. It doesn't matter if you shoot him in the toe or the chest, it's a 3 to 4 shot kill. Then when it comes to headshots, we deal a lot of damage to the head, and this means up close and at a distance, only one single headshot mixed in with torso shots will reduce the number of shots to kill. So you can actually get a 2-shot kill with just 1 shot to the torso and 1 to the head. As for a rate of fire, this is quite slow, but not as slow as the BAR at 500 rounds per minute. And what this means for our time to kill potential is in the 3-shot kill range, it'll be a 240 millisecond time to kill, which is fairly competitive. It's not extremely fast by any means, but that's a very competitive time to kill. And then when it's a 4-shot kill, it'll be a 360 millisecond time to kill, which is far less competitive. It's also worth noting, if we manage to get that 2-shot kill by landing 1 to the body and 1 to the head, we will have a ridiculously fast time to kill potential at just 140 milliseconds. So whenever possible, you definitely want to try and land a headshot with this gun. But then looking at our bullet velocity, this is standard for assault rifles at 885 meters per second. And now let's get into our range, which is pretty solid. As you can see there, our 3-shot kill range extends out to 50 meters, which is going to cover the vast majority of gunfights that you'll find in multiplayer. And that makes this gun very consistent. As for hardcore modes, the NZ-41 is one of the best guns in hardcore because it's a 1-shot kill all the time, anywhere in the body, as long as you're not using one of the attachments that reduce our damage values. And this is just incredible. As for hipfire, we actually have pretty decent hipfire with the NZ-41. It's not the best in the assault rifle category, but it's pretty close. Then when it comes to idle sway, there's not a whole lot of idle sway here. There's some movement while aiming down sight, but this is pretty normal for an assault rifle. And now let's get into recoil. And this is where things get very interesting with the NZ-41. This has some of the most random and unpredictable recoil in the entire game, and actually in the Call of Duty franchise. I don't think I've ever seen a recoil pattern quite like this. However, if you just look at these recoil tests on the wall, it might look way worse than it actually is, because something that's worth noting about this is your first 7 or 8 shots have very little recoil. They're very, very tightly grouped. It's only if you try and hold down that trigger for long periods of time, this is when the gun starts to have a mind of its own. It'll start kicking all over the place horizontally and vertically, and it just becomes essentially impossible to control and predict because it's not even consistent. So this gun heavily rewards people that are able to get onto target quickly and make sure their first shot hits, and then they have good follow-up shots as well. This isn't a spray and pray kind of a gun. But next up, let's have a look at our aim down sight spread, or the gun's actual inaccuracy. And as you can see there, it's fairly standard for assault rifles. This aim down sight spread really shouldn't be causing any issues for you, at least in multiplayer. As for our handling stats, our aim down sight time is fairly slow at 300 milliseconds. However, our sprint out time is more like average for assault rifles at 250 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 384 milliseconds for the tactical sprint out time. And then let's get into our reload add time, which is again very standard for assault rifles at about 1.65 seconds. After that, let's have a look at our mobility, which as you can see here, our base movement speed and sprint movement speed are a bit faster than average for assault rifles. However, our aim walking movement speed isn't great. It's a bit below average in this area. And there we have it. That's going to wrap it up for the base stats of the NZ-41. Now let's move into some of the interesting attachments we want to talk about. And of course, we're going to start it off with the barrel attachments. And the first thing we like to look at here is the recoil patterns with each of the barrels. And as you can see here, the first and second barrel just make the recoil even more random and unpredictable. So I'd probably stay away from those ones most of the time. The third barrel, on the other hand, that Orb Weaver 360mm barrel, this one's great for your recoil control. You can see, especially with the initial shots, it just kicks straight upwards, and it practically eliminates a lot of that horizontal bounce, which is what really holds this gun back for sustained fire. And then finally, you can see with the burst barrel, obviously we're going to be a lot more accurate, and there's just very little recoil with this. As for ranges and time to kill changes with these barrels, there's actually very little difference here. The first 2 barrels slightly reduce your ranges. All of our time to kill values are the same until we get to the burst barrel, which is the one I wanted to dive a bit deeper into. With this, our rate of fire within each burst is about 513 rounds per minute. It might actually be exactly 500. I don't know for sure. It's hard to measure exact values when it comes to this. But the biggest thing to note is our burst delay is 300 milliseconds. This is an extremely slow burst delay, and that makes this a very unforgiving choice, because if you don't get that one burst kill, it's now going to take you 651 milliseconds to get a kill on somebody, which isn't even remotely close to being competitive. To top that off, even if you do get a one burst kill, it barely gives you a faster time to kill than if you were just using the gun in full auto. And as a result, I just don't really see much reason to use this, aside from the fact that it is very accurate like you saw earlier. So maybe to challenge yourself or for a change of pace or something, you might want to try this out. But if you're looking to play as well as possible, I'd probably stay away from the burst barrel on this gun. So that's it for the barrel attachments. Now let's move on to the magazines, because these ones do actually change our time to kill potential. And first up, let's have a look at that recoil comparison. And as you can see here with the 8mm Clouser, this does reduce our recoil quite a bit. And we see a fairly similar story with the 6.5 Sakura rounds, although these ones still have a lot of that horizontal recoil and they're still very inconsistent. But now let's move on to how these impact our ranges, and both of these different ammo types, the 8mm Clouser and the 6.5 Sakura, these ones will be reducing our damage ranges down to just over 40 meters, and they both make it so it's going to be a 4-shot kill at any range, assuming we're hitting torso shots, which is not looking good for our time to kill potential in close quarter situations. But of course, let's dive a little bit deeper into it and start it off with those 8mm Clouser rounds. With this, our rate of fire is bumped all the way up to 600 rounds per minute, so that's a fairly noticeable increase to our rate of fire. However, now we lose our 3-shot kill potential, so it's going to be a 300 millisecond time to kill up close to the body, which isn't great. And then at longer ranges, this can very easily drop off to a 5-shot kill if just one of your bullets doesn't hit the torso. If you hit them in the limbs with one of your shots, it's now going to take you 5 shots to kill. Now, as a result of this, I just can't recommend using the 8mm Clouser rounds. Sure, it's got its upsides and it does make the gun a bit more forgiving in the rate of fire department, but if you're against decent players that are using competitive guns, you're just not going to be able to keep up with them using this attachment. And we do see a very similar story with the 6.5 Sakura rounds. This one does essentially the same thing, however, it also increases our rate of fire potential up to 645 rounds per minute. So we do get more of a rate of fire boost here, which means we get a slightly better time to kill, but again, it's still worse than your base time to kill up close. And therefore, if you really insist on using one of these two magazine attachments that boost our fire rate significantly, I'd probably choose this one over the 8mm Clouser, but honestly, I would rather just not use either of these and just stick with the base 303 British. And this is where it's finally time to get into some great attachment combinations with this gun. Honestly, when it comes to the NZ-41, in many cases, I feel like less is more. You don't want to stack too many attachments because you just end up making the gun worse. But let's start it off with the first build I've got for you. This one's designed to be a really accurate, good, balanced, all-around sort of a build. Doesn't have the greatest handling stats out there, but it's not bad. I at least kept it in check, and it's reasonable for an assault rifle. With this, we're using that Orb Weaver 360mm barrel. This is the one that pretty significantly improves our recoil control. So you can see here, it's quite an accurate setup, especially for those first few rounds fired. We've got a suppressor on this to stay off the radar. We've got that 2.5x optics, so we get that little bit of extra zoom for longer ranges. We're using Brace as our proficiency, the LOR reinforced stock. These are both great attachments to be using on the NZ-41. And yeah, this one's just a great consistent all-arounder. Like I said earlier, try to land a headshot. If you can mix a headshot in with a body shot, you're going to be deleting people nearly instantly. And yeah, this is a pretty basic yet powerful NZ-41 build. Now, if you wanted to play a bit more aggressively with the NZ-41, this is my more aggressive version of the previous setup. So with this one, we're not using a barrel or a magazine, which means after those initial shots, our recoil is going to get pretty crazy. So just keep that in mind. This is really designed for those people that are confident in hitting their first 3 or 4 shots in a row without spraying all over the place. And with this one, you'll notice my aim down sight time is a little bit better than the previous build. Same thing goes with the sprint out time, so you can be slightly more aggressive with this. Movement speed is also pretty decent. And while I definitely would prefer the previous build for longer ranges, I do like this one more if I'm trying to be a bit more aggressive or if I'm playing on smaller maps where I'm simply not going to run into any long range fights. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the NZ-41. As for my thoughts on this gun, I really like it. I think it's just a nice, consistent gun to use. I've had a really good time using it. It's probably not the best in the game by any means, but I think if you're able to land those initial shots really consistently, or if you're able to land that headshot really consistently, This gun can absolutely dominate, and I feel it's actually fairly underrated. I don't see a whole lot of people using this, and I think it's largely due to the fact that it is extremely unforgiving if you miss those initial shots. Now, of course, that is just my opinion. I'd like to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you think of the NZ-41 in Call of Duty Vanguard's multiplayer? Do you agree with me? Do you think this is actually a really great and underrated gun? Or do you feel like it is just too hard to control with that crazy recoil pattern? Just let me know down below. And if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of Gun Guides, I've gotten through most of the assault rifles and SMGs now. I will leave a link down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.